Can you guys hear me? So I kind of want to give you an overview of why we're doing this. This is actually quite innovative for the federal government. So let me talk about why the U.S. Department of Energy and the federal government is investing in innovation in the solar space. So as Craig mentioned, we actually started planning for the SunShot initiative back in 2010, about 5 years ago. And back then, the cost of solar electricity derived from solar power, was about 4 times higher, 4 times greater than that of conventional energy generation sources when you don't factor in all the incentives that are factored in for solar. Obviously, all forms of energy get some incentives of some form or another. In this country, for example, in coal, we would not have a cost-effective coal if it wasn't for the fact that we have a very strong national rail system. And in nuclear, natural gas, et cetera. There's a lot of innovation in all these energy sectors, but I'm going to talk specifically about solar. We started the SunShot initiative with the premise that solar will not be adopted on a very large scale if it isn't cost effective, okay? That it won't move beyond the early adopters, the people who can afford to choose solar because it is the green thing to do. We wanted to see mass market adoption, and in order for that to be achieved, it really needed to be cost effective, cost parity, if you will. And that would require roughly a 75%, 4x reduction in the cost of solar. And we set a goal for ourselves, 5 to 6 cents by the end of the decade for utility scale solar. And I remember back in 2010 when we convened over 100 of leaders in the industry, and they pretty much told us we were crazy. The cost of solar was still fairly high back then. People were very focused on addressing European markets, other markets. And it seemed like a very distant future for the United States for a cost to be at the level where we were trying to achieve. So it was a big, ambitious goal, and as Craig mentioned, this was inspired really by, the name SunShot is really after moonshot. President Kennedy's challenge to the nation to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. But that challenge, if you remember, that's actually not the hard part of the challenge, getting to the moon. The hard part was bringing that person back safely. Okay, and so our challenge here is to do so in a way that is cost effective without the need for additional incentives. So let's look at what we've achieved over the past 4 to 5 years. Very dramatic growth in the solar market. We now have over 20 gigawatts of solar all across America. That's enough to power approximately 4 million average American homes. The cost of the solar panels themselves for PV has fallen dramatically, over 64%. Actually, I believe it's about 85% since 2008. And that has led to very dramatic growth in solar under this administration. Over 20 times more solar in America than when President Obama took office. So dramatic uptake in solar all across America in multiple market segments, the commercial, the residential, and the utility scale. And that has led to very dramatic job growth. Over 174,000 jobs in the solar industry in America. We expect another 36,000 jobs this year alone. And by the end of 2016, by the time President Obama leaves office, there might be over 250,000 jobs across America in the solar industry. So very, very dramatic job growth. 1 out of 78 new jobs in America last year was actually a solar job. 1 out of 78. That's very, very impressive. And so to drive that forward, a lot of that innovation we helped spur, from the federal government's standpoint. We're 70% of our way towards our 2020 goal objectives, and we're roughly halfway into this decade-long initiative. So a great progress so far, but we can't rest on our laurels. There's a lot of work to be done. The last 30% will be actually the hardest 30%. And so there's still a number of focus areas for my office to focus on, including maintaining U.S. leadership in R&D innovation. We actually have a tremendous innovation ecosystem in this country. Some of the top research universities, some of the top national labs in the world. And in fact, they have spurred and they have developed technologies that we use in the marketplace today. Over 50% of the world records for solar cell efficiencies were actually funded out of my office over the past 30 years. And so very tremendous leadership in R&D in the world. And the area that we're focusing on here today is really empowering communities to cut red tape and streamline processes. A lot of the applications and software applications that are being developed here today is focused on that area here, and I'll spend more time talking about that. Building a skilled solar workforce. We grew by 31,000 new jobs last year in the solar industry. We need to make sure that our workers have the skills necessary to enter this very high-tech, exciting workforce. Supporting innovators and entrepreneurs, that's also why we're here. And then veterans in the solar workforce is a great opportunity. Coming back, drawing down from the various conflicts in the Middle East and around the world, we have over 200,000 of our armed service members will become veterans each year for the next several years. That's a lot of people, a lot of service members entering the civilian workforce, and they will be looking for jobs. And so the solar industry already employs roughly 10% of its workforce are veterans, and so we're trying to help make sure that our returning heroes will have opportunities in this dynamic and growing industry. And finally, domestic manufacturing is also a very key area that the government is focused on because of its flow-down effects and the follow-on effects throughout the rest of the economy. Manufacturing, this country was built in large part around a strong manufacturing sector, and we're trying to rebuild some of that. And so let me focus on one of the major areas for solar adoption. It turns out it's actually a pretty complicated process in America for a homeowner or a business to go solar. There are many market barriers, such as really fractured policies, landscape, and red tape, if you will, that hinder solar growth. And the solution, one of the solutions that we're working on is actually to make communities more solar ready. And the outcome of this is that if we make it more common, more uniform across communities around the country for their citizens to go solar, it will unlock business opportunity, and it will, in fact, spur more economic development. And so the challenge here is that in this country, we have over 18,000 different jurisdictions, over 3,000 different utilities across 50 states and various other territories. They all have different rules, and they all have different processes and regulations and authority to govern the permitting interconnection processes for a small-scale solar system, even large-scale solar system. And so we've had some success in this area by challenging various communities around the country to really spark them, if you will, to make their processes more common and reduce the burden for our businesses to help consumers and businesses go solar alike. I'm actually a physicist and an engineer by training, and so I made this observation a few years ago. Unlike physics, where we can fundamentally figure out the upper limit for the efficiency of solar cells, there is no such limit to bureaucracy. And having spent a career in the private sector and also the federal government, I can tell you, I can attest that this is really, really true. But we are working to cut down that red tape. And so this is an example of a program that we ran a few years ago, the Rooftop Solar Challenge. We worked with communities and nonprofits all over the country to reduce red tape. And since we're in the heart of Silicon Valley, I actually personally draw a lot of inspiration from Steve Jobs. And many of you may know this story. Well, back in 1983, the year before 1984, which many of you know is the release of the original Macintosh, the Mac Classic that we refer to, which is in a museum now. Let's say that he was not satisfied. Steve Jobs was the perfectionist, and it took about 2 minutes for a computer to boot up. Okay, and he didn't think that was good enough. And so he challenged his software developers, his hardware engineers, to cut down that time. Well, let's say you can shave 10 seconds off the boot time. Multiply that by 5 million users. We'll sell about 5 million computers next year. That's 50 million seconds every single day. Okay? Over the course of a year, that's probably a dozen lifetimes. So don't you think that it's important to save a dozen lives? That's how he inspired his software developers, his engineers. So by drawing that, by inspiring his teams to do that, he was able to achieve even greater. They actually cut the boot time by I believe 20 seconds. So they doubled his goal. And that's actually why my Macintosh boots up faster than my government-issued computer, which takes about 10 minutes with all the security systems. Which is a Windows PC, by the way. So for those who works at Microsoft, I'm sorry. And so we actually had about 22 Rooftop Solar Challenge teams across the country. And on average, this is about 4 years ago, they cut red tape by about 1 week. 1 week may not sound like much, right? But let's think about this. They installed 600 megawatts of solar in those communities in that one period of 1 year. Now, it's grown a lot since then. Representing roughly 40,000 installations. And you add up all that 40,000 installations, that's 40,000 weeks of red tape, 768 years of red tape. And the average lifespan of a person in America is about 80 years, so that's about 10 lives. So we help save 10 lives, and those lives move forward, right? And so another way we're trying to do that is to challenge communities to reduce that red tape. It takes, on average, a couple years ago, a consumer to go solar about 6 months, 180 days. Okay, we're trying to challenge them to communities to do that in 1 week. Okay, because it turns out if you can cut the red tape, if you can cut the process by just 1 day in America in 2015, that would represent roughly $4 to $5 million of electricity, deferred electricity that could have been generated if you just plug in by 1 day faster all across America. And so there's tremendous opportunity to reduce all that red tape if you can get it down to 7 days or even less. And the good news here is that it's not physics, it's not science, okay? Some of those challenges are really hard. This is actually the harder problem because it's really about people. It's really about connecting people with information and with processes that can cut all that red tape down. And so there's a great innovation ecosystem, and that's why a lot of these companies are addressing a lot of different aspects of the innovation ecosystem in the process to go solar. And I would be remiss if I were not to talk about shared and community solar in the Bay Area, which is really the heart of the shared economy. And so there's a great new business model that is going to be ramping up in the U.S., community and shared solar. You're going to start to see more and more of that, and it's a really exciting area that the federal government has shined a spotlight on to help spur innovation in this area. So I'm going to leave it at that and bring Craig back up to introduce our next speaker.